All right, welcome to another amazing episode of the Drew Set Leadership Show. Today we have Baruch Inbar from battlefield to brushstroke. Baruch is a visionary force who left a military career in Gaza to reimagine the world through art. A graduate of Art Center College of Design, Baruch sold his adaptations of The Wind and the Willows to Disney straight out of college and hasn't stopped creating since. Now based in Mont Shasta, California, he's an award-winning illustrator, animator, producer, and children's book author behind beloved titles like Snurtle, Thor the Polar Bear, and DJ Bear. With over 2 decades of experience, Baruch has brought imaginative worlds to life for Disney, Fox, Lego, and more, merging commercial savvy and boundless creativity. But his mission goes deeper. As founder of the nonprofit Bless the Children Project, he's using art to empower youth and transform communities. Whether he's mentoring kids or designing global brands, Baruch's life is a living canvas of courage, reinvention, and storytelling that dares to dream bigger. Welcome to the show, Baruch.
Hello, Drew. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here today.
Yeah, ditto. We both share a mutual friend, Brian Wallace, and I got looking at your LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, this guy will be great for the show. I love as an engineer, creativity is not my strong suit, right? Like right angles are my strong suit, and so it's fun to have an accomplished artist on the show.
Thank you.
So, talk to me about the transition from being a soldier to being an artist. So, did you always want to be an artist, and the soldier was the detour, or do they both follow some bit of the same path?
Well, it is was a certain detour because I've been an artist since I was a young child. Growing up in, I wasn't born in Israel. I was born in Soviet Union, but I've been doing art since a very young age, and this been has my path always. But as you probably know, in Israel, when you reach a certain age after high school, everybody have are mandatory to serve in the military.
Hmm.
So right after high school, a couple months later, I found myself in Gaza Strip and had to do my duty defending the country and doing my particular obligations in that field where I was positioned. And kind of things kind of took their own turn, and I was offered to go to officer school to become an officer based on my skills and my qualifications. So then I became an officer, and art kind of took the backstage in my work. So I was doing my work in the military, but still kind of having the sketchbook sometimes where I was able to do some art and to come up with ideas. We always have like a hidden sketchbook wherever I went. So then kind of I went on a military career, and just when I completed my fourth year being a lieutenant, I was offered to extend my contract and become a major, and then get to higher position, higher roles. But then in my last year in the military, being in the Gaza Strip, as you probably know, it's a very tumultuous place. It's very,
Yes,
it's a war zone.
yes.
I started to ask myself questions, existential questions. That is, whether this is the path I want to follow, because my job was very rewarding. I was doing some really great things there, and I felt like very fulfilled. I worked with I was kind of doing liaison work between the Israeli military, the international agencies like the Red Cross, the UN, and all the other international organizations, and the Palestinians. So I was doing kind of more diplomatic work. I was kind of making sure that everybody, all the sides were happy. So my work had a very diplomatic nature. It was very fulfilling work. And in my last year, like I said, I was starting to have questions whether I want to continue my path. And I remember I had one day I had the United States consul came to visit in Gaza Strip, and I was giving him a tour in Gaza Strip. And then he asked me, I was already kind of making the decision, I want to go study art. And he asked me, so what are your plans after the military? I told him, I want to go become an artist. And he asked me, have you thought to study in the United States? And I thought, I haven't thought about it. And the next day I received overnight a package from his office with all this list of all the best art schools in the United States. So that's kind of how my path started, going to become an artist, going to the United States to study here. And I basically decided not to extend my contract. And after that, after I finished my service, I started to do all the different, applications, doing different tests, and all kind of, all the bureaucratic stuff to apply to school. And that's how I applied to one of the most amazing schools that I've ever seen, the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. It was a big shift for me.
That's cool. What I love about that story is that's exactly what our ambassadors are supposed to be doing, right? Is looking at young men, young women, and saying, "How can I help you? How can we build peace? How can we build skills? How can we build beauty?" I think that's very cool. Real quick question about art in the military. Did you ever draw any of those voluptuous ladies on the nose of your airplanes or bombs?
No, not that kind of art. No. Yeah, my job was not exactly with the Air Force. I wasn't, working with the aircrafts or anything like that. But I did, once in a while there were opportunities to express my creativity in different, different places in the military. But it's not the place for really express my art and creativity. And I think sometimes in life, when you have a certain path and when you're thrown in something which is completely opposite of what you want to do, I think those two extremes can, at least in my experience, it put me in a position how I appreciate even more my path. When where you're taken to something completely different, then you see things in a bigger perspective. Because I went to a high school of arts just before the military. I was surrounded by artists, musicians, dancers, actors. So everybody were artists in different fields. Then I find myself in something completely the opposite of that. Gaza Strip soldiers, terrorists, suicide bombers, all that stuff. And that kind of start to kind of create a process within me that took it time to kind of to come to fruition, to realize how I appreciate my artistic tendencies even more. So I think being in that extreme environment kind of cultivated within me I even better desire and appreciation to pursue my dreams.
Yeah, I like what you say because you say that imagination isn't an escape; it's a blueprint for what's next, and I
Hmm.
love that because I think that we think of innovation. I used to lead a research department at a large corporation. I have a bunch of patents, and people think about innovation in terms of, oh, we're just going to come up with this crazy new idea, and I think no, innovation is just being useful, and then building like watching how people act, anthropology, and then building the thing that they actually want to use instead of
Hmm.
the thing that we want them to use.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Since you mentioned innovation, one of my greatest inspirations is Steve Jobs. Is like somebody I completely adore.
Yeah.
Uh, Even before him, before he passed away, and I was kind of following his path. But even more so after he passed, I read his biography that was going much more in depth into his philosophy and the different ideas he was fostering. Because I remember as an artist, I saw like how he transformed Apple when he came. Obviously, Johnny Ive, the great designer he brought on
Oh,
board,
yeah.
he made a difference. But Steve Jobs is the one who basically allowed him to go really literally outside the box and to create and to innovate something that was never done before. So I think people like Steve Jobs are for me great role models because they take any given industry and they give us an example how you can completely redefine its parameters. But it takes courage, and I know he faced a lot of objection. He was kicked out of Apple, and he was actually, they begged him to come back after 10 years. So sometimes it takes for people who thinks really very much like inside the box to really appreciate the change makers like Steve Jobs, because he's like, I've never seen anybody like him who redefined the entire personal computer industry. And then with the iPad, the iPod, the different technologies that he developed. So I think it's a great model for me, for everybody else in this field.
Yeah, he revolutionized the personal computer. He revolutionized music. He
Yep.
revolutionized the cell phone industry.
Hmm.
He invented now, I mean, people might say that, Wozniakowski or, Wozny who's Facebook?
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Zuckerberg.
They might say Zuckerberg invented, social media, but you can't do social media without the iPhone. So
Yeah.
he invented essentially the backbone of social media. We use Apple TV at our home, like, it completely changes the way that you fiddle with TV. Um, yeah, he left a dent on the universe for sure. Is there an area
Yeah.
that you want to leave a dent on the universe?
Absolutely. And I don't want to wait after I leave this planet. I want to create a dent while I'm alive, and I would like to be part of the dent and to experience its impact on the people. And just one more thing I wanted to mention about Steve Jobs. Speaking about
Yeah.
dent he left about the universe, his impact on the entertainment industry is we cannot even measure how big it is, because he was the first investor in Pixar. He's the
Yeah.
one he gave the first $5 million for to Pixar to pursue their ideas and their innovation in CGI and 3D animation, because nobody was doing that. Disney were not even close to create those kind of things. So his dent is not limited just for technology, but for creativity and large. I'm so grateful to him for that.
Yeah. So now you have, is it Snout? How do you say your website?
SNAUT, Snout, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this up here for the audience. SNAUT.com. SNAUT.com. Now,
Yeah.
Snout is 3D. Is that the majority of what you do is 3D animation, or do you do traditional 2D art as well?
I do all. I mean, I don't do the 3D myself. I work with the 3D modelers and animators who do that. I'm not a 3D modeler. I was trained more as a traditional artist. My skills are more in the traditional art, like in drawing, painting, sculpting, doing computer graphics, and also digital art and writing and storytelling. The 3D the 3D tool is an expression of ideas. It's incredible, and the tools that we are getting right now in the world is just they're phenomenal, including AI, which we can talk about it if you'd like to.
Yeah, at the risk of ruining the show because AI is so prevalent everywhere. What are your thoughts on AI? Are you for it? You against it? How do we use it responsibly?
I think the best way to describe AI and its impact on our society, if we go about, I would say, like I think it's 1700 years or 1400 years when Gutenberg came up with the first printing machine to print. They used to everything was hand scribed until then, and then when Gutenberg created the first print ability to basically to take manuscripts and print them, people were objecting to this technology. So I think we can compare that phenomenon in society, like many other things, like the steam engine, many things. I think if we utilize that as a vehicle, as the means, it's not an end. I think AI gives us a lot of opportunities to express our ideas. I don't think AI replaces our ability as storytellers. I think it improves a lot of aspects in the artistic workflow, taking an idea and to make it and to bring it to fruition. It can shortcut a lot of processes. So I think it's a great tool.
No, I totally agree. So my daughter, we just found out that she's valedictorian. We're very excited about that. So I've been helping her write her speech. And this is one of the things that I do as a service for other people is I'm like, you have to have a through line. So in her case, her speech was change your what if into watch me. And so you take this like small idea of transformation and then
Mhm.
you stretch it out on a storyboard and you pick a spot where you're going to do a transformational moment, a call to action, and you build up to it. And I use AI a lot. AI helps with that, but if you don't have the initial thought, if you don't know where you're going, I don't think you can get there.
Absolutely. I personally I think some people, for example, and this is going to be I think the next or the next discussion in our conversation is about the ability to be creative and to imagine things. So some people they say, okay, give me ideas for stories, and then ChatGPT will spit you out a lot of ideas. I don't need ideas for stories because I've been trained as a creative person from a very young age. So I don't need AI to do this work for me. I think from some people that may be the case, but I think in some point it makes us handicapped mentally and creatively. And I think we don't want to go in,
Totally.
that's an example. Like you don't want somebody to go to the gym for you because it doesn't work, you know. So
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to, you know,
I,
we have
I've
we,
paid people to go to the gym for me for years and it never worked.
exactly, yeah, it's yeah, good realization. So I think, do we have to find the balance between the technology to our abilities? Because again, I may go into more like a spiritual side of this discussion, but I think you're comfortable because I heard your
Oh,
other
lead on. Yeah,
podcast,
man.
and I love you talk about spirituality. But I think our purpose as human beings is to be creators, and this is one of
Yeah.
those innate abilities that by giving us by source creator, whatever you want to call it. So this is ability we should express as creators and use the tools, but it cannot replace our abilities to come up with ideas and to fine tune and to practice our ability to imagine and to create things out of thin air.
Yeah, I think that, and this, so I talk about leadership a lot, and what I mean, what I try to explain to people is leadership is not telling you what to do. Leadership is explaining to you where the treasure is and how I'm planning to get there, and then the rest is just a series of questions, right? I'm
Yeah,
saying, okay, we need to go over that hill, we need to go down to the left, got to skip the stream. What do you guys think? And then it's turning loose their creativity for them to solve the project for me.
absolutely. I think you touched upon a concept that I was contemplating last night because I was thinking like, what is real leadership means for me? And again, I'm sorry if I'm asking a question I'm answering because I was contemplating on the concept because your show is about leadership, and I thought, okay, what is leadership for me? And
I
I
love
think
it.
leadership for me is being a role model. Like since a young age, I didn't like to tell people telling me what to do. Maybe that's my personality, but when I take the role of a leader for others, I don't want to tell people what to do. I want to lead by example. Like I give them example how to be a creative problem solver, how to be an independent thinker. So give them inspiration so they become the leaders in their own realities. Because I think at the end of the day, each one of us is a leader of our own reality, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I like one of the things so interesting about Leonardo da Vinci is that he mastered art, he mastered technology for his time, right? He
Mhm.
mastered social dynamics. And it was after the mastery of those things that he was able to put together really interesting devices.
Yes.
And so I always tell folks as a leader, you got are you looking at other people as a gold mine? That is to say, it's something that you're digging into to take value away from, or do you look at them like a bank vault? Is that's somebody that you're trying to add gold into and deposit gold with, so that they can do more and more interesting things even without you around.
Yes, I think the it's really I would say it's a priceless ability or opportunity to allow people to tap into the gold mine that's already it's already within them. Like Jesus said, the kingdom is kingdom of God is within you.
Hmm.
So that's the real treasure, because our accessibility to all there is, to all the resources, and I'm talking about creative resources of the mind, and resources of spirituality, ideas, and innovation are all within us. I think sometimes we might need some fine tuning. And by the way, I think that engineering, and Leonardo da Vinci was an engineer as well. I think engineering is extremely creative. Like since I was a kid, I admired engineering, because you got to be really creative how you come up with different concepts, how to make things work. Since I was a very young child, I always like to understand how things work. So when I look at things like mechanical things, for example, I was like, okay, what was kind of the mindset of the person who created this mechanism? It's extremely creative, to my opinion.
Yeah, no, ditto. Actually, I broke every toy I ever had trying to take it apart and look at it and figure out how it worked. And so I'm a big piece of going to engineering school was like, I'm gonna be able to make this stuff. And
Yes.
so you kind of opened up the spirituality question. So I want to give you an opportunity to speak on that some. When
Mhm.
you're feeling a little bit run down or your creative juices are low, or maybe, you're in the doldrums of, the middle of a project, how do you recharge yourself from a spiritual perspective?
The best medicine for me is going to nature. I live in one of
Mm,
the most gorgeous locations on the planet, called Mount Shasta. That's one of the reasons that my wife and I we decided to relocate from Los Angeles to North California 11 years ago, because I felt the calling to be surrounded by nature. Still do what I love to do, just in a
yep.
different setting. Instead of being in the urban environment, I'm now surrounded with nature. I think there is a certain language that we maybe forget when we live like in urban, ultra urban environments, like where there's like a lot of buildings and Wi-Fi and all this technology surrounded with all those things, cars and freeways. But when we go to the nature, there's a certain frequency that we become tuned to, and this is what I've learned to
Yeah.
do here. I just go to nature. Sometimes I even hug trees. They have frequency. I really feel the energy of the nature. So for me, it's the most spiritual thing is to be in nature, and I enjoy it, and it recharges me all the time.
I love it. I love it. I wish more people could be honest about that. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm not enough. You're not enough. We need to go tap in to this beautiful creation that's all around us. I love it. I love it.
and,
Okay.
and
So
just
you went,
yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, I just an idea. Just kind of it reminded me of somebody again. I like to talk about people who inspire me. George Lucas, for example.
Oh yeah.
When George Lucas created Star Wars, he did that not in Hollywood. He bought a ranch in North California, somewhere in Marin County.
Yeah.
He isolated himself with his group of artists. I mean, before he did the art, but when he was working on the writing and he was creating the whole idea, he was immersed in nature. So I remember when I was watching documentary about him, that was for me a very inspirational. I was like, this guy is very unique. The way he approaches. I mean, he's still part of Hollywood, but he came up with a completely different approach to create things and to come up with one of the most amazing franchise on the planet. And it was all
Oh,
inspired by nature.
yeah. And Star Wars has a way of catching you that no other franchise does. Such Star Trek is interesting. Marvel is interesting, but I don't think any other franchise makes you feel like you could be a Jedi quite like Star Wars does.
There is a secret. Do you know what's the secret behind that?
No, I'd love to know though.
when George Lucas was working on writing Star Wars, he had one of the most amazing mentors, Joseph Campbell. Heard about Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, now that you mention it, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it without that.
So Joseph Campbell was mentoring George Lucas to write Star Wars, and Joseph Campbell wrote one of the most important books for any storyteller. It's called The Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Oh
So
yeah, I read that. Yeah.
So Joseph Campbell, he understood the primordial and ancient subconscious archetypes that are embedded within our society. It's a very ancient understanding how we operate in this reality in terms of archetypes. So if
Yeah.
you study Star Wars from that perspective, you understand that he used, I don't like to use the word formula, but he understood the important ingredients, how to create a story that completely grabs you and puts you like in the place like you want to be the Jedi, and you know you have to deal with the dark force, but there's a purpose to that. So there's a whole journey that the main hero, the protagonist, goes in the story. That makes what makes you identify with the main character. So that's I think that the really what makes Star Wars so unique because of that understanding.
That is fantastic. I actually love the hero's journey. And when I work from a leadership perspective with companies, I try to help leaders write micro stories so that everybody in the company shows up with what I call main character energy,
Hmm.
not superhero energy. So superheroes are the ones that jump in front of the speeding train and they like put their hands out and they stop the train and they rip up the train tracks and they destroy the train and the city's leveled when they fight. But the main
Hmm.
character jumps in and he has to save everybody with his limited human self.
Yep.
And I'm like, what would it be like if your whole company showed up every day as the main character of their own story and saw that their main character story ties into the main character story of the business as a whole?
Yeah, and I think it's so beautiful you're using that in your training, Drew, because but also because you mentioned the superheroes. Every superhero was just a normal guy or normal woman until they had that particular event,
Right.
life-changing event that transformed them into that's called the calling. So
Oh,
something
yeah.
igniting within them that calling that I have a certain superpower, which is your calling. That's your superpower, and that's what kind of initiate. That was the process of initiation going to their hero's journey. So I think it has both components of the regular person that becomes the superhero because once they listen to the calling, they go on onto their journey.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna have to ruminate on that. The way that I see it whenever I speak, so I tell people I solve the R&B problem. This is where you are and this is where you want to be. And
Hmm.
so I help you solve that. And I do it through speaking, I do it through coaching, I do it through events. And in every one of those modalities, I try to create a calling moment where I look at the folks and we've kind of laid out the high stakes and the low stakes. And I'm like, hey, this is about you. Like let everybody else fade back in the background. Are you going to take this moment to be the moment that you changed, or are you going to take this moment to that your heart hardened, and maybe it's the last opportunity that you have, and you'll never be able to make your heart soft again. I try to make one of those moments of calling in every event that I do.
And I think what you mentioned is the aspect of urgency because I think sometimes people procrastinate, and I think when you emphasize there's urgency, not because it's like you want to create some kind of intimidation, but because there's something within you that's going to help somebody on this planet. There is something that you hold that's going to help other people. So when you add this aspect of benevolence, you have this aspect of service to humanity. You understand that your calling is bigger than you. Doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a chef, you're a driver, doesn't matter. There's something within you that's going to serve others, and I think that's the kind of urgency that is good that you remind people. It sounds like you're doing that.
Yeah, I think you guys are understanding why I invited Baruch onto the show. Okay, so let's talk about your career. You sold Wind in the Willows to Disney just out of college.
Yes.
That's like casually amazing. You're like, yeah, so I sold a big story to Disney. Talk to us about what it's like to sell to big companies, Lego, Fox, Disney.
When I was a student at the Art Center College of Design, my thesis project was I basically one day I was kind of sitting and meditating, and I asked what would be my project, and I heard a voice telling me "The Wind in the Willows." I never read the book even. I don't
Okay.
know where it came from, so I went to the library and I decided to pick a copy of the book that has no artwork because I didn't want to be jaded. So I chose a copy of the book without any artwork. So I read the book, and then I started to come up with my own interpretation. And since I was raised as a young child adoring and admiring the work of Jules Verne because I love Jules
Okay.
Verne since very
Yeah,
young
yeah,
age.
yeah.
So my take was basically taking The Wind in the Willows and give it a Jules Verne kind of a treatment. So that was my adaptation, taking a very familiar classical tale with very Victorian setting and give it a little bit more of a steampunk futuristic
Oh,
treatment.
fun. Yeah.
So that was I was working in my last year or so at the school, and I basically created a whole. I wrote a written treatment. I made a bunch of sculptures and a
Okay.
lot of artwork, and then we had an exhibition. And then I was introduced to a couple of young producers, and they really liked what I presented. Interesting enough, the same year, The Wind Willows became a public domain.
Oh, okay.
So it's important because when you go and you pitch something to the studios, the first thing they ask you who owns the rights. Because it became a public domain, the studios felt there was an urgency because somebody is going to do it. If they're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do that. So then,
Ah, yep.
so Ani, it's basically what happened is we start to go to the studios, and the studios were so interested. We found ourselves in a bidding war between Disney and DreamWorks that wanted both to acquire the project.
That's fantastic.
That was incredible. Basically, we went to to Universal, to Paramount, to went DreamWorks, all the big studios. But the final bidding war was between Disney and DreamWorks, and that was I think was very exciting to see two mega superpowers in Hollywood fighting over a vision that I created. I think that was really incredible. And of course, there were lawyers and the agents involved, but that was an incredible experience because I got to pitch something right out of school, high school, excuse me, right out of art school, and presenting a vision to big studios, and it was for me like an incredible experience.
That's crazy. Uh, I'm like, I'm literally floored. All right, so but now you've done stuff for Lego, and my family is a monster Lego fan.
Hmm.
We have, well, so like whenever the kids, I would do this thing with the kids every week, every Sunday night. I would say pick a definite major purpose for the rest of the week, and it's something that has to be a definite major purpose is something too hard to do in one day.
Hmm.
And if you do the thing, then we'll go get. That's how you get your allowance, basically. And we
Nice.
would often buy Legos and build those. So tell me about working with Lego.
I'm glad you asked because right after I made my deal, by the way, Drew, a technical thing. I just received the note that there is a delay between what I speak and what is showed on the screen. I don't know if you experienced that, but I was told that there is like a delay because I
Oh,
see myself on the screen. Is that
there's a little bit of delay. Yeah, I'm watching your mouth now.
okay? So anyway, just I got a note. So going back to Lego, right after we sold the project to Disney, I got offers to work on different projects. I worked on Little Prince very early, creating concepts and storylines with Pathé UK, the production company. But also with
Mhm.
Lego, I was actually involved in a very early Lego movie before it became what it became. And it's interesting story because I was approached by my agent back then, and we went to meet the executives Lego, and they want to see what kind of story I would propose. I started to use a research about Lego, and I found out that Lego started as wooden bricks. Did you know
Oh,
that?
really?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
So when Lego started, it wasn't plastic; it was made of wood, and I was blown away by this idea, by this fact, because I had no idea that Lego, the plastic bricks we all know, they used to be made of wood.
Huh.
So then I started to kind of do more research, and I came up with this really fantastical story, which is based on some facts, but I added it some Scandinavian lore because Lego is from
Yep.
Scandinavia.
Yep.
So we came up with this really fantastic story that have to do with how Lego came about, starting from wood carving and all these magical creatures. So that was the original Lego movie ideas that we came to the studios. But the Lego executives decided to go with a different approach, and what they chose is what we saw later on the screens. But I took that story with the wooden bricks, and actually I created my own screenplay based on this idea, which had
Okay.
nothing to do. It evolved into something completely different. But I
Yeah, yeah.
guess I created a whole screenplay that started with my work with Lego. It had to do with Scandinavia. It's called Narrow Song. It's a screenplay I've written, and it's based on Scandinavian lore, but it kind of evolved out of Lego. But Lego was actually the springboard to come up with something completely different. So I think this example shows like how one thing can turn to something else, because sometimes when we work on a project, it not always goes in a certain direction, but
Yep.
because it went a different direction, it evolves into something completely different. Actually, it's a beautiful story. Came out, turned into something really beautiful.
No, I love this. Actually, I say this to a lot of young, especially young engineers. They all say, "Oh, what do I should I do when I get out of school?" And I say, having been, a higher individual at a couple of Fortune 500s, um, I sell you a career path. I'm like, "Hey, listen, if you'll just come work for me, and every 2 years I'll give you a 2.5% increase in your pay, and you'll be secure and safe." Whereas when you are in the creative world, sometimes it's boom, sometimes it's bust. And I've kind of come to this spot in the entrepreneur land. It's no other ride I'd want to be on. It gets kind of scary sometimes. What do you do when you hit a trough and you start hitting that dark night of the soul and you're saying, maybe I'm not good at this, maybe I should do something else?
I think the best question you can ask is, what kind of problems I can solve.
Mm,
And I think when you start asking questions to problems, how can I solve problems? In my case, these are creative problems. So I think when you spend some time for reflection, and I think this is a practice that I recommend to any individual, whether whatever your industry, and spend some time on a daily basis reflecting things. Like, I know in this
mm.
time, in age, in our modern society, people are glued to their screens, spend so much time in front of the screens. But I think it's important to set off some time during the day without any monitors, without screens, just sit and reflect, to ask questions. And I think when you ask really questions from a genuine place, what problems can I solve, I think you will get an answer for that.
I love it. I have 4 kids, and, the way I envision it is, when the blackbirds are on a wire and you walk over and you kinda, like, shoo them away and they all, like, scatter, and then they come right back to the wire that you shooed them off of. Like, that's
Hmm.
how they are with electronics. They're just like, "Oh, okay, I'll leave that," and then they just settle back 5 or 10 minutes later with where they are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love the, giving your brain space and your soul space to search and to solve a problem. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what are you into these days? How can folks work with you? What are you trying to knock out these days?
Well, I work with a couple of clients right now developing stories and characters. I also, right now, going back to the Wind in the Willows, I'm actually looking for ways, just to give you a brief explanation what happened with the Wind in the Willows, because that relates to what I'm doing these days. The Wind in the Willows was originally sold to Disney, and after 5 years, my partners and I, we sold it to Fox. It was in development with Fox, and then after a few years in development in Fox, basically the project put on a hold. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to get into the details, but there was a lot of different power struggles within the company. So basically, Fox was developing the project, and
Yeah.
then a few years ago, Disney acquired Fox. So the project now is back with Disney. So right now, I've been communicating with the office of Bob Iger, the president, the chairman of Disney, the Disney company, to see how we can bring the Wind and the Willows back into production. This is another thing I'm right now working on, is bring the project back into production. I think, I don't know whether Bob Iger or his executives, they realize they're sitting on a gold mine. If we again, the Disney company, the last couple of films like the Snow White and Little Mermaid,
Oh my gosh. Mhm.
they were not a big success. So I
No.
think, there's an opportunity for the studio to revive this mega franchise. So that's another thing I'm working on right now. uh, Also working on my next children's book that I've been writing, and I'm working on a couple of screenplays. And also, I'm gonna be doing a workshop in August. I think I mentioned that it's called Summer Immersion for Creatives. That I'm gonna be sharing some of my creative tools that I would like to offer also to the listeners to the show. That I would love to invite to be part of that workshop in August.
I love it. I love it.
Thank
So
you.
you mentioned children. Let's pull on this thread. You have a nonprofit,
Yes.
Bless the Children. Does this come back from your Gaza days, from your military days, or where did it come from?
No, Blessed Children Project, it's a project that I started with my wife back in 2011. It has to do with my background. I was raised as a foster child in Israel. I
Oh,
had a very, very tough upbringing as a child in Israel, but I'm very grateful that the foster system in Israel was very supporting of me, and they recognized the place I grew up. It's a foster home that is like it's a boarding school, but a foster for foster children. So they recognized my artistic abilities from a very young age. So they supported me, and because their help and support, I became who I am today. So for me, giving back has always been part of what I do. It's always about not just what I want to bring to the world, but I want to help inspire children, especially the less fortunate ones, to also tap into their abilities and to support them to fulfill the dreams. So Blessed Children was born out of that intention.
I love it. So, more specifically, though, Bless the Children helps kids do art, or it just helps them with daily chores, or it helps them with scholarships. What exactly does Bless the Children do?
Blessed Children Project is training children to tap into the creative abilities. It's We are focused on art and creativity as vehicles of transformation. So the kids we work mostly with are kids that have artistic inclinations, but we don't just develop regular artistic skills. Because of my background in entertainment industry, we work with kids that are really into animation, toy design, game design, cartoons, comic books,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we really cater to children that want to be visionaries in that field. And it's amazing how kids, when they're given the opportunity to express their ideas, how they flourish. So Blessed Children Project, we have a flagship project. It's called Art Mentorship for Kids. This is what we've been doing in that particular area where I am right now for the last 11 years. We've been working with local kids and teenagers, helping them to basically to develop their storytelling abilities visually, but also write ideas and express them in different mediums.
I love that. I'm a huge believer that one of the best things we can do for kids is let them see us seeing them. I don't know if it's which philosopher it is, but I think maybe we exist because we see ourselves in other people's eyes, especially as kids. And
That's true.
how that adult thinks about us helps, it really forms a lot how we think of ourselves. And so to have that encouragement is a big deal. I think that's super cool. So,
Yeah.
how can people get involved if they want to help that?
Well, they can go to blessthechildrenproject.com. That's
Okay.
our website. They can learn about what we've been doing, and they can involve or contact me for any inquiries they may have. So that's the website. We have a lot of information and videos where they can learn about our nonprofit and be involved in any shape or form they would like. My sincere desire is to really that's what we're planning. My wife and I want to open a cultural center where we live in the Mount Shasta, and but also open different satellite centers in different places around the country and the world, where we can empower local children, especially the less fortunate ones, to really to foster the creativity. Because this kind of goes back to my the mass the things that are more important for me, like how we empower the world through imagination and storytelling. It's by empowering children we can accomplish that. So working with communities would be a great vehicle for that transformation.
I love it. I love it. I'm kind of against the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. I think that it is the parents' job, but certainly it takes aunts and uncles who care, who
Yeah.
reach out and make a space for the kids.
You know, in
Okay,
my case, it was my parents' job, but my father was gone when I was 3.
right.
My mom was very mentally ill since I was 7 years of age. So they were not the one who's taking care of me. The other people were involved, and I think many children in our society right now they're in that kind of situation. So it takes uncles and aunts, not necessarily from the same bloodline, to help them.
Yep, yep. That's what I'm saying. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are kind of running out of the show. I mentioned I'm kind of under the weather, so I apologize. But let me turn you over the next 2 or 3 minutes. Floor is yours, and I just love to hear what you want to close out for the audience.
Well, I would like to say a few things. First of all, I think what I would like to inspire the audience, doesn't matter what line of work you are, I think it is important for each and every one of us to tap into the power of imagination. Imagination, for me, it's not an escape, it's a vehicle of transformation.
Mm,
When we tap, my motto and my most important quote that I actually sign all my emails is by Albert Einstein, who said, never give up on what you really want to do. The
mm,
person with big dreams is more powerful than the one with all the facts. So this really explains the power of imagination, because if we look at our reality and we just deal with what we have, there is no, if we just think that this is what it is, there is not going to be an opportunity for growth. But when we tap in and we ask ourselves the right questions, like what I said earlier, what problems can I solve? How can I serve others? So then we tap into our power of creativity. And again, doesn't matter what line of work we are. I think each and one of us have the ability to innovate in our field. For that, we need imagination and creativity. And I think another aspect that supports our ability to be imaginative and creative is to maintain flexibility of the mind. I think rigidness of the mind is the enemy of innovation. So I think it's very important to find daily practices through different mediums, different exercises, different tools to allow ourselves to be flexible in our minds. I think having a flexible mind is extremely important for us to grow. So I think that's another aspect. And I think another thing that I would say that when we see things that are not working in the world, even before we ask our questions, what problems can we solve? I think we all of us can be good couch critics. We can look at the world and say, "Oh, this thing doesn't work. This is not okay. This is not okay." There was one professor in my training in art center that always asked, "So what are you gonna do about this?" So
Ooh,
I think
nice.
I always it was asking on this question, and this was for me one of the most important things I took from art center is that when I see something not working in the world, I ask myself what I'm gonna do about this. So I think that put us in the front steering wheel. We're not the passive passenger, but we become truly leaders of transformation because when we see something is not working, and I ask myself what I'm gonna do about it, that because questions they create a momentum. So when you create momentum, that makes us active participants in society and also creators. So that actually empowers us to when you look at things from that perspective.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, if you're listening to the show and you are a producer or you're somebody that's you're asking yourself, how can I get more involved with bringing light and life and art to kids? Reach out to Baruch Inbar. He's got storyboards that he's working on. He's got the nonprofit that he's working on. He's got lots of success. So if you're a young producer and you're looking for that next gold mine, that next ticket to the next level, consider Baruch. Give him a call. Tell him you heard him here on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. And with that, we are out.